Have you ever wondered what is actually happening in a woman's mind during a deeply intimate moment? A man may notice her physical reactions, her expressions, or the way she responds to closeness, but those visible signs only tell part of the story. What happens emotionally and psychologically can be much more complex. Imagine a couple who have been together for years. They are attracted to each other, they trust each other, and they share a private moment. From the outside, it may look simple, but inside her mind, there may be many things happening at once. Anticipation, attraction, comfort, vulnerability, emotional connection, or even thoughts about whether she feels completely safe and understood. And here is something important to remember. There is no single female reaction. Two women can experience a similar intimate situation very differently. Even the same woman may experience it differently on different days. Her mood, stress level, relationship with her partner, physical comfort, personal history, and sense of emotional security can all influence the experience. This is where one of the biggest misconceptions about intimacy begins. Physical closeness does not automatically create emotional closeness. A woman can be physically attracted to someone while still feeling emotionally uncertain. She can deeply care about her partner while having a day when stress makes intimacy difficult. And she can feel both emotionally connected and physically attracted when the circumstances feel right. So the real question is not simply, what does a woman feel physically? The more interesting question is, what is happening in her mind as intimacy becomes more intense? Research into human sexuality shows that our emotional state, thoughts, relationship experiences, and physical responses can interact in complicated ways. That means understanding intimacy requires looking beyond the moment itself. In the sections ahead, we'll explore the role of attraction, trust, emotional safety, anticipation, communication, and even common myths that can quietly create misunderstandings between partners. But before we talk about what she may feel in the moment, we need to understand something that begins much earlier. What happens in the brain before intimacy even starts? Think about what happens before intimacy ever becomes physical. A woman may already be processing dozens of signals without consciously thinking about them. How does she feel around this person? Does she feel respected? Is she relaxed? Does she feel attractive? Is she worried about something that happened earlier in the day? These questions matter because attraction is not simply about appearance. Of course, physical attraction can be important, but the brain also pays attention to emotional context, memories, expectations, and the relationship itself. In simple terms, the brain is constantly asking, does this situation feel right for me? Imagine your body as a car. The engine may be capable of moving, but the driver still has to decide whether it is safe to put the car in gear. In a similar way, the body may be physically capable of responding, while the brain is still evaluating whether the person feels comfortable, connected, and ready. This is why anticipation can matter. When someone feels emotionally comfortable and expects a positive experience, they may find it easier to relax and become engaged in the moment. But when the mind is filled with anxiety, pressure, embarrassment, or uncertainty, the experience can become much harder. Consider a woman who is attracted to her partner. She may enjoy being close to him, yet perhaps she has had an exhausting day. She is worried about a family problem, or she simply does not feel settled. Her attraction has not disappeared. Her mind is simply dealing with something else. That distinction is important. Feeling desired and feeling safe can exist together. In fact, for many people, feeling wanted becomes more comfortable when it comes with respect, trust, and the freedom to communicate. And this is where men sometimes make a mistake. They may assume that attraction automatically means readiness, but attraction is one signal, not the entire picture. Every woman is different. There is no universal psychological switch that turns intimacy on or off. Personal history, relationship quality, stress, health, mood, and individual preferences can all influence the experience. So if the brain is evaluating the situation, the next question becomes even more important. What makes her brain decide that this moment feels safe? Now we can take that idea one step further. If the brain is constantly asking whether a situation feels right, what helps create that feeling of safety? For many people, trust plays an important role. Emotional safety does not mean a woman has to be emotionally dependent on her partner, or that she must be deeply in love before she can experience attraction. Those are completely different things. Emotional safety simply means feeling respected, heard, and free to be honest without fearing pressure, ridicule, or judgment. Think about the difference between walking into a room where you feel completely comfortable and walking into a room where you feel watched. The room itself has not changed, but your experience of it has. Intimacy can work in a similar way. When a woman feels respected by her partner, she may find it easier to relax and communicate. When she knows her boundaries will be taken seriously, that can reduce unnecessary tension. And when she feels listened to, she may feel more emotionally connected. But pressure can create the opposite effect. Imagine a woman has already had a stressful day. Then she senses that her partner expects her to respond in a certain way. Even if she finds him attractive, that expectation may make it harder to relax. This is why attraction alone does not guarantee a positive experience. Here is the myth. If a woman is attracted to someone, everything else automatically falls into place. The reality is much more complicated. Attraction is one part of a much larger psychological picture. Trust can also influence vulnerability. Being intimate can involve allowing another person to see you at your most exposed and unguarded. If previous interactions have been respectful and supportive, that history may influence how comfortable someone feels in the present moment. And those previous interactions do not have to be dramatic. Sometimes it is the small things. Does he listen when she speaks? Does he respect a simple no? Does he notice when she is uncomfortable? Does he treat her with kindness even when intimacy is not involved? These everyday behaviors can shape the emotional environment of a relationship. And emotional security does not mean being romantic every minute of every day. It can come from consistency, honesty, respect, and knowing that you can communicate without being punished for being truthful. But trust explains only part of the picture. There is another powerful factor that can change the entire experience, what she believes you are feeling about her. Now, consider another powerful part of the picture. What happens when a woman genuinely feels desired by her partner? Feeling attractive can influence confidence. When someone believes their partner appreciates them, not just physically, but as a whole person, they may feel more comfortable being emotionally open and present. But there is an important difference between feeling desired and feeling objectified. I want you can communicate attraction, affection, and genuine interest. I only want your body communicates something very different. The difference is often not in the words themselves. It is in the behavior surrounding them. A genuine compliment does not have to be dramatic. Sometimes a simple, sincere comment can mean more than exaggerated praise. And often, attention matters more than words. Is the partner actually listening? Is he present? Does he notice her reactions? Does he show appreciation outside intimate moments? These details can influence how someone feels about themselves. Think about it this way. Imagine you receive a compliment from someone who has consistently treated you with kindness and respect. It may feel meaningful because the words match their behavior. Now imagine receiving the exact same compliment from someone who ignores your feelings the rest of the time. The words may feel very different. That is why emotional validation can matter. When someone feels accepted and appreciated, they may feel less pressure to perform or prove something, and that can make it easier to focus on connection rather than self-consciousness. Insecurity can work in the opposite direction. A person may wonder, do I look attractive enough? Is my partner judging me? Or am I responding the way I should? Those thoughts can pull attention away from the moment. And here is the surprising part. Sometimes the most powerful signal is not something a partner says during intimacy at all. It may be how he treated her earlier that morning. Did he listen when she talked? Did he show affection without expecting something in return? Did he appreciate her effort? Did he make her feel valued as a person? Those everyday interactions can create the emotional background that follows a couple into private moments. So, feeling desired is not simply about hearing flattering words. It is about experiencing consistent attraction, respect, attention, and appreciation. And that brings us to something many people misunderstand. The experience is not necessarily determined by physical contact alone. Now we can look at another piece of the puzzle. The relationship between the mind and the body. It is easy to think of physical intimacy as something controlled entirely by the body, but your brain is constantly receiving information from your body while also interpreting what is happening around you. Think of the brain as a control center. It receives signals about physical sensations, but at the same time, it is paying attention to emotions, surroundings, memories, expectations, and even stress. All of those signals can influence how a person experiences the same physical moment. Consider something as simple as relaxation. When someone feels calm and comfortable, they may be able to focus more easily on physical sensations and emotional connection. But when the mind is racing because of work, family problems, financial concerns, or anxiety, attention can become divided. The body may be present, but the mind may be somewhere else. This is why stress can influence intimacy in ways people do not always expect. Fatigue can matter too. So can certain medications, hormonal changes, chronic health conditions, pain, and other changes that sometimes become more noticeable with age. These factors do not automatically remove desire or intimacy, but they can change how someone experiences it. And this is particularly important for adults over 50. Aging does not mean intimacy has to disappear. However, the body may respond differently over time. Hormonal changes, menopause, medications, health conditions, and changes in energy can all influence sexual comfort and response. That is not a failure. It is part of understanding how the body changes throughout life. And there is another reason we should avoid simple explanations. A person's experience can change from one day to another. Imagine listening to your favorite song. The song itself has not changed, but your experience of it might. If you are relaxed and happy, you may enjoy every note. If you are exhausted or distracted, the same song may barely register. Intimacy can be similar. The person, the relationship, and the physical circumstances may be exactly the same, yet the emotional experience can still be different because the internal environment has changed. This is why there is no single biological explanation that can describe every woman's response. The mind and body are constantly communicating, adjusting, and responding to circumstances. And understanding that can remove a lot of unnecessary confusion. A change in response does not automatically mean attraction has disappeared, and one difficult experience does not necessarily define the relationship. Now, we can understand why two women, and even the same woman on two different days, may respond very differently. But this leads directly into one of the biggest myths about female intimacy. Now that we understand how closely the mind and body can work together, it is time to clear up some of the myths that can create confusion between partners. And the first one is perhaps the most important. Myth number 1. Every woman experiences intimacy the same way. The reality is that there is no universal female experience. Personality, preferences, relationship dynamics, emotional state, health, age, and personal history can all influence how someone experiences intimacy. What feels comfortable and meaningful to one woman may feel completely different to another. Myth number 2. Physical attraction automatically means emotional readiness. Not necessarily. A woman can find someone very attractive and still need time, comfort, privacy, or emotional connection before she feels ready for intimacy. Attraction and readiness can overlap, but they are not the same thing. Myth number 3. If she is quiet, she must be enjoying it. This is a dangerous assumption. Silence does not automatically communicate comfort, enjoyment, or consent. People communicate differently, and the safest approach is never to guess. Healthy intimacy depends on clear, mutual communication and respect for boundaries. Myth number 4. A partner should automatically know what she wants. This sounds romantic, but real relationships rarely work that way. Even couples who have been together for decades cannot always read each other's minds. Preferences can change. Moods change. Physical comfort can change. What worked yesterday may not feel right today. Communication is more reliable than guessing. Myth number 5. Age eliminates female desire. This is another common misconception, especially among older adults. Desire can continue throughout later adulthood. However, the way someone experiences intimacy may change with age. Hormonal changes, menopause, medications, health conditions, stress, and relationship circumstances can all influence desire and comfort. Changing does not mean disappearing. And finally, myth number 6. Confidence means never asking questions. Actually, healthy confidence can look completely different. A confident partner does not need to pretend he knows everything. He can listen. He can ask. He can respect an answer without becoming defensive. That kind of communication can create something far more valuable than the appearance of confidence, trust. So once these myths disappear, we can finally look at the question underneath them. What does she actually need in order to feel comfortable and connected? When people talk about female psychology, they sometimes look for secret signals or hidden clues, as if there were a special code that could reveal exactly what a woman is thinking. But healthy intimacy does not require mind reading. In fact, one of the most important skills in any intimate relationship is much simpler: paying attention and communicating openly. Comfort can sometimes show through relaxed conversation, natural engagement, and a willingness to participate. But these signs should never be treated as a substitute for communication, and discomfort deserves just as much attention. If someone becomes tense, hesitant, withdrawn, unusually quiet, or appears uncomfortable, the right response is not to ignore it or assume it will disappear. It is to pause, listen, and give that person space to communicate. This is where consent becomes especially important. Consent is not a one-time permission. It is an ongoing part of mutual intimacy. Either person can change their mind, slow down, or decide to stop at any point. And silence should never be interpreted as automatic agreement. Sometimes the simplest questions can create more trust than trying to guess what your partner wants. Are you comfortable? Do you want to continue? Is there anything you'd prefer differently? What makes you feel most relaxed? These questions do not have to make a moment awkward. When asked naturally and respectfully, they can actually reduce uncertainty and help both partners feel more secure. It is also important to talk about preferences outside intimate moments, when there is no pressure. A relaxed conversation can make it easier for both people to understand each other's boundaries and expectations. And remember, boundaries can change. Someone may feel comfortable with something one day and not feel comfortable with it another day. That does not necessarily mean something is wrong. People have changing moods, stress levels, physical conditions, and emotional needs. This is why emotional intelligence can be more valuable than memorizing techniques. The goal is not to become an expert at decoding women. The goal is to become a better listener and a more attentive partner. As we get older, intimacy can change, but change does not mean the end of intimacy. For many couples, the experience after 50 or 60 may simply become different from what it was in their 20s or 30s. Desire can change, energy can change. The body can respond differently, and life itself can become more complicated. For women, hormonal changes around menopause can sometimes affect sexual comfort, desire, and physical response. Some women experience vaginal dryness or discomfort, while others notice little change at all. Every person is different. Medications can also play a role. Certain medicines may influence libido, energy, mood, or physical response. Health conditions, such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, arthritis, or chronic pain, can also affect how comfortable someone feels with intimacy. And then there is stress. After 50, people may be dealing with work, retirement decisions, aging parents, family responsibilities, financial concerns, or changes in their own health. Even when two people deeply care about each other, these pressures can affect energy and desire. But there is another side to aging that is often overlooked. Time can actually strengthen intimacy. And physical changes do not automatically mean attraction has disappeared. A woman's body can change with age without making her less capable of affection, desire, closeness, or emotional connection. The same is true for men. Growing older does not mean intimacy has an expiration date. It may simply require more communication, more patience, and a better understanding of the changing body. A woman is not a puzzle to solve, and no partner can accurately predict another person's thoughts every time. Even couples who have been together for decades still benefit from honest conversations because people continue to grow, change, and experience life differently. Another important truth is that past experience is not a reliable instruction manual. This is why curiosity is more valuable than certainty. Many men worry that asking questions will ruin the mood or make intimacy feel less passionate. In reality, respectful questions often create the opposite effect. They communicate care, attention, and a genuine desire to understand rather than impress. The connection mindset asks a different question. Are we both comfortable, connected, and enjoying being together? Notice how different that feels. So what can actually make a difference? The answer is surprisingly simple, and it begins long before the bedroom. 7 practical changes can make a meaningful difference in how couples experience intimacy, and none of them requires complicated techniques. Third, slow down emotionally. Intimacy does not have to begin with physical contact. A conversation, shared laugh, affectionate gesture, or quiet moment together can help create a sense of closeness. When emotional connection has room to develop naturally, there may be less pressure on either person. Fourth, ask instead of assuming. You do not have to guess what your partner is thinking. Simple questions such as, "Are you comfortable?" or "Is there anything you would prefer differently?" can prevent misunderstandings and show that her experience matters. Fifth, respect boundaries immediately. If your partner says no, wants to stop, or seems uncomfortable, that boundary should never become a negotiation. Respecting it builds trust. A healthy relationship allows both people to feel that their choices will be taken seriously. Seventh, maintain affection beyond sex. Small acts of kindness can matter more than people realize. Holding hands, checking in after a difficult day, sharing a meal, offering encouragement, or simply spending uninterrupted time together can reinforce emotional closeness. Affection does not always need to lead somewhere else. The larger lesson is that better intimacy is usually built through many small behaviors rather than one perfect technique. And remember, these ideas are not rules for every woman. Individual preferences and circumstances differ. What matters most is creating enough trust for both partners to communicate honestly and comfortably. When couples focus on connection instead of performance, intimacy can become less stressful and more meaningful. Think of them as 4 pieces of a puzzle. They often fit together beautifully, but each piece has its own shape. Attraction is the feeling of being drawn towards someone. You may find a person appealing, interesting, or physically attractive. Desire is different. Desire is the wish for intimate connection or sexual activity. A person can feel attracted to someone without wanting intimacy at that particular moment. Then there is arousal. This refers to physical and psychological responses associated with sexual stimulation. Importantly, physical responses do not always perfectly reflect someone's thoughts or feelings. The body can respond in ways that do not necessarily mean a person wants to continue. And finally, there is emotional intimacy. That is the feeling of being understood, trusted, accepted, and connected to another person. These 4 experiences can overlap, but they do not always arrive together. For example, a woman might feel strongly attracted to her partner, but be exhausted after a stressful day and have little desire for intimacy. Another person might feel emotionally close to a partner while experiencing very little physical desire at a particular time. Stress is a good example of how these pieces can shift independently. Someone can love their partner, feel emotionally connected, and still have difficulty becoming physically engaged because their mind is overwhelmed. This is why assuming that one response automatically means another can lead to confusion. It also explains why relationship satisfaction and sexual satisfaction are related, but not identical. A couple can have a strong emotional relationship while experiencing temporary challenges with physical intimacy. Likewise, physical attraction alone does not guarantee emotional closeness. The important lesson is simple. Don't reduce a complex human experience to one signal. Instead of asking, "What does this one reaction mean?" it can be more helpful to ask, "How are we both feeling, and are we communicating honestly?" Once you understand these differences, you stop treating intimacy like a code that needs to be decoded. And once you understand those differences, the final question becomes much more meaningful. What does a woman actually want her partner to understand? After everything we have discussed, there is one perspective worth considering. Imagine for a moment that you are on the other side of the relationship. Imagine being close to someone while wondering whether they genuinely see you, listen to you, and respect you, not simply whether they find you attractive. A person may feel more drawn to a partner because of kindness, humor, confidence, patience, emotional support, or simply the way that person makes them feel when they are together. And emotional attention can influence closeness. Sometimes what matters most is not a dramatic romantic gesture, but knowing that your partner notices you, that they remember what you said, that they care when you are uncomfortable, that your feelings do not become less important when intimacy enters the conversation. Her preferences, her boundaries, her comfort, her emotions, her experiences, her changing needs. When both partners feel valued rather than judged, intimacy can become more than a physical experience. It can become another way of expressing trust, affection, and connection. And if you remember only one idea from this entire video, let it be this. If you take one message from this entire conversation, let it be this. Intimacy is about far more than what happens physically in a single moment. There is no universal female experience. Every woman has her own personality, preferences, history, health, emotions, and circumstances. What feels comfortable and meaningful for one person may feel completely different for another. We also saw how closely the brain and body communicate. Attraction, stress, anticipation, physical comfort, and emotional connection can all influence the experience. That is why emotional safety matters. Feeling respected, listened to, and free to communicate can create an environment where both partners feel more comfortable. But attraction alone cannot replace communication. And silence should never be treated as automatic consent or proof that someone is comfortable. Healthy intimacy requires mutual agreement, ongoing communication, and respect for boundaries. We also talked about aging. Getting older does not mean intimacy disappears. Desire and physical responses may change because of hormones, medications, health conditions, stress, or other factors. But affection, attraction, closeness, and emotional connection can continue throughout later life. And if intimacy becomes painful or persistently difficult, that is something worth discussing with a healthcare professional rather than simply accepting it as inevitable. Ultimately, better intimacy comes from understanding rather than guessing. It comes from listening instead of assuming, from curiosity instead of pressure, from connection instead of performance. The strongest relationships are not built on one person knowing everything the other person wants. They are built by creating enough trust that both people feel comfortable speaking honestly. Because the real goal isn't learning how to predict what every woman feels. It's learning how to create a relationship where she feels safe enough to tell you, intimacy does not have to disappear as you get older. In many relationships, it simply evolves. What matters most is staying curious about each other, communicating honestly, and remembering that closeness is built through trust, affection, respect, and attention. You do not need to memorize some secret formula called female psychology. You need to understand the individual person you love. If something has changed physically or emotionally, and it continues to cause discomfort, frustration, or concern, talking with a qualified healthcare professional can be an important step. There may be an underlying issue that can be addressed. And if you are in a relationship, consider having a simple conversation with your partner. Ask what makes them feel comfortable, appreciated, and understood. Sometimes, one honest conversation can open a door that assumptions never could. If this video helped you see intimacy from a different perspective, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more clear, respectful, evidence-informed videos about relationships, health, and aging, subscribe to the channel. Because a healthy, intimate relationship isn't about knowing exactly what someone is thinking. It's about creating enough trust that they feel comfortable telling you. And in our next video, we'll explore another important part of intimacy that many couples misunderstand.